Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. The concept of parliamentary supremacy has its own value, its own merit at the top of a parliamentary democracy as far as parliament is concerned. And I know we've had comments from senior judiciary regarding this. I want to today explore this in detail. We want to talk about the kind of polarization that we've seen also come to light in a lot of recent cases and what it means for democracy, what it means for parliament's supremacy in this system, and how do we undermine a system like this. Also, you know, relative to this are the continuing cases and how the judiciary is currently looking at them. Let's talk about all of that today. I have with me Barrister Ammar Ziauddin, who is a legal expert. Thank you for being with us today. We also have with us Osama Malik, who's also a lawyer and advocate. Thank you so much for being with us today. Ammar, we were talking about this earlier. Of course, you know, parliamentary supremacy is very important in the kind of democratic systems. But then on the other hand, there's an argument that's made that, you know, democracies are usually evolving. They take a lot of time for them, you know, to grow. And often, you know, there are a lot of mishaps. There are a lot of challenging times. First of all, do you think that we're getting worse to get better? Are we also going through those challenging times? How are you looking at the current polarization as a lawyer between the parliament that we saw not too long ago, between the parliament and the Supreme Court?
I think the democracy as a whole suffers, right? So whenever you talk about constitutional democracy, I for one don't believe in the argument that parliament is supreme, the constitution is supreme, and all other organs of the government work under the constitution. And in this constitutional democracy, the courts are the final arbiter. And when you see this tussle not just among the coordinating branches, but within the Supreme Court, you know, there are arguments being made, there are stories being written, there are tweets or posts being published that there is in-house bickering, and institution as a whole suffers, democracy as a whole suffers in Pakistan.
But isn't it true, Osama, isn't it true that, you know, of course, that judiciary is eventually responsible for interpreting the constitution? To that, I don't think we can argue. But the question is, then how is it going to step into the domain of the parliament and start curtailing what they can and cannot legislate, which is the cornerstone of any democracy?
That is true that the judiciary and an independent judiciary needs to interpret the constitution, but the judiciary cannot be independent of the constitution itself. They cannot be above that, and we must always understand that it is parliament that represents that democracy. Any thriving democracy is represented by its parliament, and for a few judges to repeatedly challenge any laws passed by that parliament, that speaks against democracy itself. Whatever we may say, the collective wisdom of parliament cannot be set aside repeatedly under the garb of calling it unconstitutional or any other similar thing. Judges, nonetheless, I agree that they are experts in their own fields, but these laws are also passed by people who are also
have come with a certain mandate.
They have come with a certain mandate. And not just that, it's backed by the law ministry and relevant ministries, and they all have legal advisors. The Solicitor General Office has experts. So we are saying that all those experts don't know what the constitution is, and only these three judges know the constitution. I think the judges should, whenever taking any notice, whether it's the high courts or the Supreme Courts, they should think a million times before they take up any such case against any bill passed by parliament, because declaring everything unconstitutional and striking it down, it puts a very, very negative spin against democracy itself.
And also against the institution. Let me come back to you. We also have with us Javed, jadoon, who is a political analyst. Thank you so much for being with us. Javed sir, can you hear me?
Yeah, sure I can.
You know, another interesting angle to this is that, you know, the morality, the greater good, which is, the concept of, for the judiciary to act in the greater good, in what's happening in the political scenario, what's happening overall as far as the country is concerned, the state of it, the overall affairs. But how do you look at the scenario? I mean, are they at all mandated to step in? And then, the question, I think I'll go to the lawyers here on the question of 184 and, whether the suo motu and all of that. But we are living in a time where there's, Twitter, X, whatever, so social media, and everything and anything that is said has an impact. Do you think that the judges today as a whole are cognizant of this?
Thank you very much, Mahrukh. I think we are living in a very dangerous times because of the social media. There are facts and there is fiction, and it is very difficult to sift the fact from fiction. Social media is unbridled, it is not regulated, it doesn't have any editorial policy. Whatever you want to post, you can do that. And the kind of criticism which is directed towards judiciary, sometimes maybe it does have some kind of a weightage, but most of the time it is based on likes and dislikes. It depends the kind of a point of view you have given your political affiliations or your political loyalty. And if something goes one individual or one party's favor, then the judiciary is really good, it is upright, and it is performing its duties in accordance with the Constitution of Pakistan. But the same bench or the same judiciary, when goes against any individual or any political party or group, then they are demonized. I think this is leading us towards a judicial anarchy unless and until there are certain rules and regulations and parameters are decided by the judiciary itself. Because we are not living in normal times, Mahrukh. In normal times, maybe it is okay to criticize certain decisions. But in Pakistan, it is entirely different ball game right now, because it is not the judiciary's decisions which are being targeted, but individual judges at different levels, including the top court of Pakistan and the higher courts as well. Their judges are made extremely controversial. I think right now, I believe that judiciary is under tremendous pressure. They're very cautious and conscious about how they are being viewed by the larger public in Pakistan, particularly those who are on the social media platforms. So I think these are very tricky times, and I really don't have a very clear answer how you can handle this situation, because on one side, it is a very unbridled media without any regulatory formulas or policies or code of conduct. On the other side, you believe that sometimes you need to have something to streamline it as well, because it's a country of 25 crore people. It's a nuclear state, and it sits in a very strategic location where you have got enemies all around you. So the political instability is now getting into every sphere, including the religious factors are being involved into this political situation as well. And of course, what is going on against, as far as the price hike is concerned, the spikes in the power and utility bills are concerned, putting together every kind of chaos in Pakistan. I think it is an extremely dangerous situation which has to be dealt with very carefully, very diligently, and all the stakeholders, including the judiciary, the civil and military bureaucracy, and the political parties. Those who believe that maybe the security establishment doesn't need to involve itself in the political process in Pakistan, but that may be okay when there are very normal situation, normal circumstances. But today we are sitting on a volcano as far as Pakistan's myriads of problems are concerned. So I think it requires the involvement.
On that, let me come back to you. Ammar, one of the things that Javed Sahab said is that, they are conscious, essentially. Should they be so conscious? Because certainly, the fact that we are living in a social media, we're living at a time where, the coverage is such, the nature of it that, we see tickers immediately. The nature of the cases are political also. So is it possible, do you think, in your opinion, for the judges to remain aloof and for their decisions to echo that aloofness?
I think judges are not aloof by and large because time and again they've used original jurisdictions, citing media reports, and this has been the case under this court as well. Interestingly, Mahrukh, the founding fathers of the US, they sat together and they envisaged what the Constitution of the US should look like, and in Federalist number 76, Hamilton argued that judiciary is the least dangerous branch because it does not have power over purse or arms. In Pakistan, it's not necessarily the case, and it's because they've continued to involve themselves in political thicket, in policy matters, in issues that require traditional deference and restraint. And because of the overreach or activism, so to speak, we found ourselves in this situation where, like Javed Saab mentioned, and so many other commentators talk about, these are very interesting times that we are living in, and we, you know, the democracy is on a tailspin. Perhaps introspection is needed, and I hope that there will be introspection coming soon from the Apex Court.
Fair enough. Osama, even otherwise, when we look at the structure as far as, you know, the cases, so we are facing a couple of very, very important, one issue is of course the elections. And, you know, the judges have said from time to time, correct me if I'm wrong, that they don't want to be embroiled in political questions. But invariably, you know, it is a little unfair that they are, you know, because of the kind of political polarization that we've seen recently. We've also seen people, you know, parties refusing to talk to each other, categorical no's, categorical, you know, in a parliamentary democracy, of course, it's important for opposition, government to be able to talk to each other. Instead of the name calling, instead of the antagonism, aggressiveness, we've all seen it. There has been no question of talks. There has been no question of sitting down. And we've even had the judges say from time to time that it would be better if political parties could come to a solution themselves, if they could sit together. So invariably they find themselves in that situation where they have to adjudicate on political matters. Isn't that true?
Yes, that is by and large true, but at the end of the day, I agree with you on this matter that politicians are not talking to each other. That much is true, but that does not still give the judiciary a right to interfere in that matter.
But they do have to. They do have to adjudicate on those matters. Like, for example, the election issue. I don't want to go into specific cases at all, but I'm saying that, you know, of course, it's a recurring issue. If you go to them, on issues of, for example, we've had parliament dissolution. We've had, you know, again, there is a recurrence and there is a tendency. I don't know what one may call it, by one party or another to go to court on it and then to politicize the issue. Isn't that true?
That is true. All parties have gone to court at one point or the other, and therein lies the problem, I agree. But again, judiciary should still show restraint in certain matters. Even in the matter of the elections, I think the Election Commission is the body that is constitutionally mandated to decide that.
But we see them throwing the ball back in the court of the Election Commission time and again. Isn't that true, Ammar?
So look, the idea that, you know, this vacuum theory is pushed time and again. You know, you see an executive branch or other branch under the Constitution, or say the politicians are not doing their job and we have to come in. You still don't have to come in. This is where judicial restraint comes in.
So what do?
They defer the matter to other coordinating branches. You spoke about elections. When you get yourself squarely into the matter that involves election, you're getting involved in a political process, and there will be no right decision because you're going to decide one way or the other, and you're going to sort of palm on political polarization further. So a mature court would only defer these political questions to other branches. But isn't it in the
Constitution?
The Constitution says exercise restraint, and having embroiled themselves in policy and political matters for so long, there's a reason why you hear voices now on the Supreme Court that, you know, there's certain matters that we should not get ourselves involved in. Why? Because these are political questions. These are not questions for us to raise and settle, least of it in our original jurisdiction. So restraint means even though you can exercise jurisdiction, you refuse to exercise jurisdiction because, you know, let the other branch, let the political process evolve, let the parliament decide, let the ECP decide. And let the evolution of political process take its own form and shape without you interfering in it.
Fair enough. Let me go to Javed Saab. Javed Saab, I hope you've been listening. Exercising restraint, of course, you know, that's one of the options that's in front of the judiciary. But in the kind of scenarios we've seen, unfortunately, in the last year or so, come up, do you think that it's practically possible for the judiciary to step away?
Mahrukh, I think it would be oversimplistic view when we say that judiciary should exercise restraint and stay aloof from the most important judicial questions being raised today in Pakistan. And I think the topmost is the elections to be held within 90 days mandated time period, or not being held within the stipulated time period, because it is not an ordinary issue. Judiciary is the institution which interprets the Constitution of Pakistan. Now it has to go to the top court one day or the other, and they will have to deliberate upon it whether elections can be postponed for a certain time period and may not be held within the 90 days time period mandated in the Constitution of Pakistan. Because it is the issue and the question of the elections, the general elections. And I have been a journalist for the last 38 years. I have never seen such a situation which is so unpredictable. And I mean, it is so disturbing as well that even Election Commission can come forward and announce a date. Maybe that would be in December, in January, in February 2024. But there has to be a clarity of a decision as well, Mahrukh, because we are faced with so many grave challenges, including the political instability and the grave economic challenges which Pakistan is faced today with. Look at the streets are teeming with the people showing discontent and anger against the rising prices of everyday used items, and including the utility bills as well, and the prices of petroleum products as well. This anger is gathering after every passing day. Let us be very honest, Mahrukh, that unless and until we decide the date of the elections, you really can't imagine the stability coming back to Pakistan. It is so interlinked, intertwined with every other issue in Pakistan that you need to have a government which is mandated a 5 years time period, and we can put the onus on the elected government. They will be given the responsibility and the mandate to resolve so many problems. And I think it would not be easy for any political party, any coalition government to go holistically as far as these complicated problems are concerned. The people of Pakistan are looking towards the top institutions, including the Judiciary, the Election Commission of Pakistan, and even the caretaker regime. And if they don't get the answers, then what they really get is more discontent and more anger and more.
I think a non-lawyer view.
Yeah, so the issue is, like Osama Saab mentioned, who gives the date, right? We've seen Supreme Court interfering and giving a date in the provincial matters. Do we have elections? You know, one of the great jurists of the past, Afzalullah Saab, he wrote in one of his opinions that one of the essential guiding principles when you exercise jurisdiction, the original jurisdiction under Article 183 is whether the executive will enforce your orders. So if you're not passing orders that are enforced or executable orders, you end up cutting a sorry figure. So again, going back to the debate in principle without sort of citing examples, even when you can give a date, you should try not to give one. You should exercise restraint and let the constitutional bodies do their job, because eventually passing an order which is not implemented upon, it undermines your authority as an apex court.
So you're saying, if I'm going to take Osama's opinion on this also, that what you're saying essentially is that when you go into that domain, you'll eventually compromise your effectiveness. Is that true, Osama? Do you agree with that?
I do agree with that, and I also think that the courts not only undermine their own authority, they undermine the authority of the regulatory bodies. And not just that, in recent years we've seen that the apex court has been undermining the authority of the high courts. When a matter is seized with the high court, they take it up. So it also shows that their distrust, or their sort of they feel that somehow the judges of the high courts are not competent to decide such constitutional matters. So I think the apex court should show restraint, as should other courts, and we should let the regulatory bodies, whether it's the Election Commission or the Pakistan Telecom Authority or it could be any regulatory body.
But what about
we should let
comments,
them
generally
grow.
speaking, which are made, by the way, in any case, and their influence on recurring cases in the High Court? Do you think that there should be restraint exercised in that direction also?
Absolutely. I think every word a judge speaks, it matters, even if it's not written in their order. It still matters because it gets reported, and not just in the media, on social media, I think. And unfortunately, judges of the high courts do read those reports or on social media, and I think it affects them to an extent, and it gives them an impression of what the Supreme Court wants, and that should not be the case. The Supreme Court should let the high courts decide and not interfere in that, and not give any
But isn't it true that we've in the past have had decisions, political decisions, being taken, that potentially influence a lifetime career of politicians? So there's a checkered history there. Are we still, and how do we get away from that? For that, the Parliament has to legislate, and when it chooses to legislate, that doesn't it hasn't met with, unfortunately or fortunately, whichever way you look at it, with the positive attitude from the courts. Isn't that true, Ammar?
So even those disqualification opinions, now that we have the benefit of the hindsight, have we been able to reduce those individuals to non-entities? Do they not influence our political processes even today? Do they still not, even though they can't hold an office as per the opinions of the court, do they still not lead the party? So I think as we discuss it, there are more compelling arguments for courts to exercise restraint, and they should also be wiser from the experience of having having had 2 or 3 active phases of judicial activism to sort of roll this back and let the other coordinate branches.
But isn't it perhaps time for major judicial reform, or long overdue, and we've not been able to do that?
I think we start with courts of first instance. An ordinary man doesn't really care what court is doing on the issues of constitutional interpretation. An ordinary litigant is suffering from backlogs, from delays. An average civil matter in Pakistan, the shell life is 25 years. There's no enforcement of commercial agreements in Pakistan. So there are law reforms needed, and law reforms are needed mostly where it affects your ordinary litigants the most, and we start with the courts of first, your civil and district courts. Of course, the appointment of judiciary and their subsequent elevation and promotion to Supreme Court, all of that needs to be reviewed.
Also, I mean, the ambit of that, and we've seen the recent debate over that also.
I think they've sort of increased and vested more power and jurisdiction upon themselves, and the debate is whether they could do it or not. And it's up for grabs, and we've seen lately, especially in the last 1 year, the Parliament trying to legislate to sort of limit that power, and that ended up being in the courts as well. One such bill was suspended, even though the Act of Parliament cannot be suspended. Here a bill was suspended in CP5. So yes, there's issue of reforms as well, but there's a broader issue of manifest human behavior coming from this institution. And at the end of the day, individuals who wear robes need to self-regulate as well.
Right, fair enough. Javed Sahab, as far as the issue of judicial reform is concerned, we've been talking about this for a while. Of course, it's been on the agenda. Successive governments have failed to get through this mammoth task. Even as we speak, it's long overdue. In the kind of scenario that we are in at this time, do you think, I mean, of course, we talk about elections, we talk about certainty, we talk about the fact that, of course, the elections will mean perhaps more certainty. But do you think the solution to this problem, the kind of quagmire that unfortunately exists in Pakistan at this time, is elections?
Mahrukh, if you look at the situation holistically and realistically as well, when we talk about reforms in judiciary, we forget that there are many other reforms interconnected as well. Judicial reforms alone will not be able to lead the country out of the crises which Pakistan is faced with. We need to have the governance reforms. We need to have the political reforms. We have political dynasties. There's no democracy within the major political parties in Pakistan. They talk about democracy, but they don't exercise democracy within themselves. Be that any political party, those even who remained in power, and it is the family affair entirely, and no other second or third tiership leadership is allowed to emerge. So far, as far as the media is concerned, even we need to have a code of conduct how media should operate in Pakistan, because unbridled media is not allowed anywhere in the world. I don't recommend, I'm not suggesting that the freedom of speech or the freedom of the media should be curtailed, but there should be an editorial policy as well, because you need to have a custodial control over the editorial policy as far as the print media is concerned or the electronic media is concerned. Now, coming back to the judicial reforms, of course, there are no two opinions that we need to have judicial reforms, and very far-reaching ones as well. But when we talk about again and again and emphasize about the judicial restraint, I mean, then what options do we have? Okay, let the judiciary exercise restraint. Then what about the Election Commission of Pakistan? Is it an independent body which takes decisions in accordance with the Constitution of Pakistan? Is it looking at every angle of the Constitution? And is it exercising the kind of independence which is being seen to be independent as well? Mahrukh, I was in India, posted there when elections took place in 2008. I saw there that their election commission is so fiercely independent that it puts everybody, every political leader, every political activist at its place as far as the code of conduct is concerned. But why Election Commission of Pakistan has become so controversial that its credibility has been eroding every passing day. So we need to have a very fiercely independent Election Commission of Pakistan as well, so that nobody is able to cast any aspersion, any doubts over its role. I mean, it's a question of Pakistan. We are not talking about the institutions. Institutions are because there is a country, there is a state. The nation-state systems concept, which was born out of Treaty of Westphalia, is primarily being eroded in Pakistan right now. Institutions can only survive when country survives as a cohesive, as a national nation state. So I think today it is important that we have reforms not only in one segment of the society, not just one institution, but if we look at the situation in Pakistan, we need to have a very holistic strategy and approach to carry forward the process of reform so that the confidence of the people of Pakistan is restored on the institution. Every time we blame somebody or some institution because of our own failures.
But,
I think primarily,
Javed, isn't it true that as far as institutions are concerned, that our political parties are by and large responsible for a lot of aspersions that have been cast, or on institutions.
Yes.
Whether we talk about the Election Commission, whether we talk about the head of the Election Commission, whether we talk about, judiciary also. Overall, there is, the kind of responsibility that one expects from political parties has by and large also been missing.
Mahrukh, if you give me 30 seconds, I think those who failed the people of Pakistan are the political parties. People's confidence over the ability of the political parties to deliver is literally diminishing with every passing day, week, and month. And it is the loss of the political parties on one side and the loss of the state of Pakistan as well. I think the entire political system has become questionable as far as the people's aspirations and their desires are concerned. It's a young country with more than 65% population. It's a young population with ages less than 30 years. So what can they expect? I mean, they're like a rudderless ship. So I think entirely the responsibility lies with the political parties of Pakistan that they need to chart a new course for Pakistan. They're not even willing to sit with each other to discuss these very critical issues. There's a certain amount of hatred against each other. They really can't tolerate. There's a kind of animosity between them. They're not political players. They are behaving like a tribal system. I think this is very, very unfortunate. I think we have to be honest with that. Unless and until we try and find out what is ailing Pakistan. So ultimately, I think with all responsibility, I can say that it is the political parties which have failed Pakistan and the people of Pakistan. I'm talking about each and every political party, whether it is the left-leaning or the right-leaning or the middle of the road or the religious political parties. They have failed the people of Pakistan, and that's why they are very disenchanted with the entire system.
Javed Saab, let me come back. Ammar, of course, political parties, yes, what Javed Saab is saying, but in terms of politicking, we've recently seen on the election issue also, one of the major political parties, part of the government, part of the alliance also, and part of the Council of Common Interests as far as the elections delimitation issue is concerned, now stepping away from the issue and going back on the 90-day period issue. That's politicking, in your opinion? Is that, a change of heart? How do you look at, because when we look at these things, of course, they also have an effect on institutions, on their, how we look at them, how we categorize them, how ultimately we, in the eyes of the public, how they are made to look.
So it's not the first somersault that they've made, either on political or on constitutional matters, but I think I will second the opinion of Javed Saab without sort of getting too much into political debate, that it sort of erodes the confidence of people in these political parties further.
Fair enough. But overall, where does the politicking stop, and where does the question, Osama, is that where does the politicking stop and where does the interest of the country long term come in, as far as, because politicking exists all over the world.
It does.
But there's also nationalism, there's also, I'm not going to say that any party is not patriotic, but the question is that the balancing of both those things, they're very important for any individual.
I think we must allow political parties to grow and allow them to find some kind of middle ground on their own terms. In the 90s, we saw the Pakistan People's Party and the PMLN at loggerheads with each other. And later on, these two parties came together for the Charter of Democracy. So it took them time. And I think it will be the same with other parties, but we have to give them time. Other institutions cannot step in every time they see parties politicking. That is something they're bound to do. As far as national interest are concerned, at the end of the day, politicians do come through eventually. We've seen that with the 18th Amendment, we've seen that with so many other laws that they've come together to pass. So it's not as if they don't come together. At the end of the day, we've seen a lot of that. We've seen with a lot of rape laws, anti-rape laws that have come in place. In fact, it's the judiciary that is now causing the problem as far as rapes are concerned. The conviction rate is 2%, and that's not because of lack of legislation. So I think the judiciary should look at itself before it comments on others, particularly on politicians. Yes, politicians do bicker, but that's part of their job, and we should let them do that and let them grow and let political parties grow.
Fair enough. Javed Saab, do you think that we are, again, as far as politicians are concerned, as far as political parties are concerned, do you think that we are perhaps, this is a necessary phase, but at what cost? And are we really going to get better? Do you think our politicians, our political parties are going to get better? This is the natural order of things. Would you agree with that? Or do you think that, it's just downhill? What is your overall opinion on what's happening? As far as individual political parties are concerned, their stances are concerned, their take on issues of national importance are concerned?
I'm afraid they haven't learned the lesson from the history. I'm talking about the mainstream political parties like Pakistan People's Party, Pakistan Muslim League, and even Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, and many other regional parties as well. They haven't learned the lesson from the history. They are repeating the same old mistakes instead of making the new mistakes. Because coexisting in the political arena is the first objective, should be the first objective of the political elite in Pakistan. Until and unless we learn to coexist, and we can have a very constructive criticism, they can give their own manifestos, and they can sort of pursue their own political philosophies. They should be directing their energies to create hope among the people. If any single political party is attempting and trying to give hope to the people of Pakistan right now, when they are struggling with skyrocketing inflation, which is hovering around 27 to 28%, the inflation, which is the highest in South Asia as well. Our currency, which has crossed $300 mark,
has a plan.
I mean,
Isn't the issue also whether any political party has, a plan, or whether, if we are sympathetic towards a political party, or we want to vote for any political party, the question shouldn't be, whether our sympathies are there. The question should be, do they have a roadmap for the future of this country? Do they have a roadmap of, taking us out of the economic crisis, taking us out of the despondency, unfortunately, that exists at this time?
Yes.
So those questions have to be asked by our people. Are we giving them that much responsibility? Are we letting our, it's really up to the people also, right? I mean, who they vote in, and that responsibility has to be on you and I, and, and that responsibility is ours to bear.
Mahrukh, I'll give you just a single example. The caretaker government, today's caretaker government, has come into power. It's only a 1 month old government. And look the way all the criticism is being directed at them. Can you expect that they can bring surprises as far as managing the economy is concerned? Those who remained in power, including Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, Pakistan People's Party, Pakistan Muslim League N, they have been in power for the last 30 years. The entire mess has been created by these political parties. But unfortunately today, they have washed their hands and they are directing their criticism against this government, which has come into power only a month ago. I mean, expecting the caretaker government to perform some magical tricks and sort of address the very complex economic issues. This is unfortunate. That was the point I was trying to highlight, that instead of extending support to this caretaker government, let them perform, let them deliver. If they can't deliver, maybe down the road, because their primary responsibility is to conduct and sort of facilitate the general elections in a free and fair manner. But as far as Pakistan's economy is concerned, I mean, you really can't wait for 3 months. So waiting for 3 months would be a sort of a recipe of disaster. So instead of criticizing the government, which has gone into a panic mode, Mahrukh, look at them. They are not able to make decisions because every kind of a criticism from the social media, from the conventional media, from the drawing room intellectuals and all the political parties. So what do you expect them to do? And instead, they are gone into the panic mode, and that's really not a very good scenario. Your question was very valid, extremely important question, that have they chartered any future course of action as far as the political parties who are claiming their stake into the political system, those who want to come into power after the general elections? I believe personally that not a single political party has charted a course for the future of Pakistan. They do not have answers to the very complex issues which Pakistan is faced with. They always claim that they have. Look what PTI did. Before coming into power, they were claiming that they have answers to all the ills of Pakistan. When they came into power, then they started saying, well, we never knew that the economy was in such a huge problem. So I think it's the same as the case with every other political party.
Haven't we paid enough price for populism, or selecting or voting for people who don't have a plan to give the people of this country?
So elections here are not decided on manifestos, right? We don't really have politics around issues in Pakistan or what policies.
But don't you think that should change now? I mean,
it should. Now. And the bigger debate is a structural debate. And the debate is whether the parliamentary system is in its present form and dispensation delivering to you. Every member that we return from a constituency is not expected to legislate on behalf of the people he or she represents, but that person is expected to discharge executive responsibilities, infrastructure, roti, kapra, makan, ghar, service delivery, which is why perhaps you need to revamp the structure of democracy that we are operating in. Perhaps the way to go forward is a presidential form of system. I'm not saying it's the solution, but at least we need to sit down and reevaluate whether our present dispensation of democracy, having experimented, with these political parties, with these individuals, is it really delivering, and is it going to deliver in the foreseeable future as well?
Are you suggesting we need a change of form of governance?
Yeah.
Not
presidential form of
Ammar,
do away with the parliamentary democracy.
What's your opinion on that?
I do not think any such radical change is required. I think I do agree that we treat our legislators as mayors, but that is exactly because we do not have mayors. Most of the time our local bodies are either suspended or their term has run out and new ones have not been elected. I think that we need to strengthen the local bodies, the local administration, the municipal bodies, and not just that, we need to have their terms fixed under the constitution so that as soon as the previous ones, their term is over, a new one can be elected, and we need to give them the powers.
So the problem with the third tier of government is, as soon as PTI came into power, they introduced the new law and they devolved the local structure altogether. Will you really have an empowered third tier of government in the parliamentary form of system? And we've seen from examples from our history, starting from the turn of millennium to even late last year, that the local system under our present dispensation has not really been empowered. So the question is, for how long?
So that's why I'm asking for constitutional cover, to give them constitutional protection so that not every government,
they have 140A
and
in
that
the
will come through the
constitution.
parliament, no?
That
The
will
kind
come
of
through
one.
parliament.
No, but they have the constitutional cover. It
And
is
not
there
just
in the constitution.
constitutional cover, they must be given budgetary
Yes.
Yeah, the
allocations for
financial
that.
allocation.
But did we not go towards that and then sort of, that didn't work out?
Well, to an extent, we've given the provinces fiscal autonomy. We've not given that to the local bodies. I think the provinces now need to devolve that, and through a constitutional mechanism that is guaranteed by the constitution, it should be ironclad, and they should be given the resources.
So the provinces will have different experiences altogether under the NFC award, whether or not they have meaningful fiscal autonomy, whether they get their due share, and whether they contribute towards the federation. All of that is up for grabs. Again, not that I'm trying to be radical here. I'm just trying to sort of give my 2 cents in a debate, that the issues that we've identified, and we'll continue to identify these issues, some of these are issues that are very much there on an individual level, but some of these require structured reforms. And
That's what I'm saying, that eventually it comes down to reform, whether we talk about, local bodies reform, or we talk about judicial reform, or we talk about, in some cases, I would even say, political parties need to perhaps work on their structure and reform, empower themselves. So all around, perhaps it's a call for reform, which will, do you think, come from an empowered parliament?
I think it comes with maturity, and both Javed Saab and Osama Saab has already alluded to it. These political parties, they got together once, but they sort of backpedaled on it. But for national issues that we face, these issues are bigger than individuals, they're bigger than parties.
National dialogue between all stakeholders. Javed Saab, unfortunately we're running out of time, but this is something that keeps coming up. National dialogue between all stakeholders. Do you think perhaps we are going towards that kind of a national dialogue? And perhaps it's more important than anything else?
Mahrukh, political parties are all about political dialogue. As far as the democratic system in Pakistan is concerned, which is a parliamentary form of government, political parties are represented inside the parliament and outside as well. So I think dialogue should be held within all political stakeholders, those who represented the people in the parliament and those who were not able to represent them in the parliament. I think that's the only way forward. And there should be some kind of though it's a very now repeated word, that the truth and reconciliation probably would be the way forward, that we need to admit the kind of blunders or mistakes we committed in the past. And once we try and renounce such kind of a behavior and never repeat such attitudes in the future. So as was pointed out earlier, there was a dialogue between the two main political parties, PPP and PMLN, and ultimately they ended up bridging up their differences. So why can't other political parties be involved, including those who are not in the parliament. So I think there should be a grand dialogue, and ultimately the political parties are the only stakeholders who are going to rule Pakistan and represent the people of Pakistan's aspirations. If they can't mend their own fences, what kind of a message they would be sending to the common man in Pakistan? I mean, the message of hope, the message of reconciliation, and message of peaceful coexistence. These are the three themes the political parties should be working upon, Mahrukh.
Thank you so much for being with us. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have. Thank you for joining us, Javed Jadoon Saab, Barrister Ammar Ziauddin. Thank you for being with us, Osama Malik. Thank you for your time. When we talk about, of course, elections are important, and we've seen a lot of, talk on the issue of elections. We've seen legislate, we've seen, attempts of adjudication on it. We've also seen, the courts and the cases and all of that. But perhaps a more important question for the people of this country is that when they elect people, what are they looking for? Are we educated enough? And I don't mean whether we have degrees or not. The question is, are we now educated enough after seeing the kind of regression that we've recently seen, unfortunately, to look at what each political party is offering us? Are they prepared enough to come and govern us or not? And those questions perhaps are more important for the people of this country than political affiliation for any other reason. Thank you so much for joining us today.